to do a video on. It's a bill that's in my state, so I gotta talk about it, especially when it's my subject. It's about guns. So, this is state bill or Senate. Sorry, not state. Senate bill number 367, and it was brought to my attention by somebody, in my circles, on Discord and Twitter and everything like that. And I didn't even know about it because I'm not even paying attention to politics, whatever. I should be at least be paying attention to what the politician passes in my own state, but I don't hardly pay attention to what politicians do anymore. But I'm very glad this was brought to my attention, and I want to go through it and read it. So this is basically a bill protecting the state. Very constitutionalist point of view. I'm very happy with the way it's going. I think it's a really good. From what I've read so far, I want to go through. I kind of already spoiled it for myself. I wish I had recorded my initial reaction, but I didn't. So, anyway, let's go through it and let's break it down. So, what this bill basically does is protects the state government from the federal government. Very constitutionalist point of view. It's basically going to nullify any federal, not any. Federal laws that are federal acts, laws, municipal orders, executive orders, court orders. It lists everything in here that come from the federal government to try to rule in the state. That goes against this bill what is now already added to the Missouri state constitution. So let's go through it. So Section A, blah blah blah, repealed. Section blah blah blah. This is just going over the basic stuff. Second Amendment Preservation Act. The General Assembly finds it clears that the General Assembly of the State of Missouri firmly resolves support of the United States Constitution against every aggression, whether foreign or domestic, and is the duty bound to oppose every infraction of those principles which constitute the basis of the Union of the States. Because only a faithful observance of those principles can secure a nation's existence and the public happiness. Acting through the United States Constitution, the people of the several states created the federal government to be their agent in the exercise of few defined powers, while reserving the state governments to power and legislate on matters which concern their lives. So this is saying, hey, you are not a positivist government. You only have a few rights that we gave you. So again, this is very anti-federalist law that we're talking about here. This is really good. Already right off the bat, some really good stuff that we're talking about. Anyway. The limitation of the federal government's power affirmed under the 10th Amendment United States Constitution, which defines the total scope of the federal power that which has been delegated by the people to several states of the federal government, and all power delegated to the federal government in the United States Constitution is reserved to the states respectively or to the people themselves. Yeah, I hope you understand what that means. I hopefully I don't have to unpack that. It's pretty basic. Whenever the federal government assumes powers that people did not grant the United States Constitution, its acts are unauthoritative, void, and of no force. Again, very anti-federalist point of view, very grounding Jeffersonian writing. This is really, really good to see from a state government really sticking it in the mud, drawing a line in the sand. You are not allowed to do this. This is what the Constitution says, and this is how we perceive the Constitution, regardless of what the Supreme Court says. And we're going to draw a line in the sand about what you say and what your true authority actually is. And as a voluntarist, I don't really care. I don't think you have any authority. But again, this is a really good step in the right direction from the constitutionalist point of view. It's really, really good. The several states of United. I think they should have written that a little bit differently. But anyway, the several states in the United States of America respects the proper role of the federal government, but reject the proposition that such respects requires unlimited submission if the government created by compact among the states was exclusively or final judge of the extent of powers granted to it by the states through the United States Constitution, the federal government's discretion, and not the United States Constitution, would necessarily become the measure of those powers. To the contrary, as in all other cases compacts among powers having no common judge, each party has an equal right to judge for itself an infraction of the compact have occurred, as well as to determine the mode and measure of redress. Again, it's really slapping in the face. If you didn't get it already, we're going to slap you in the face again. The Supreme Court, you cannot just set up a court that deems in the federal government. You can't just have one of the parts of the federal government say, we're exempt from, we perceive the Constitution, we have the sole monopoly of what the Constitution says. We're going to say, no, all the states and even the individuals have the right to say, no, you don't have the authority to do that. Nope. This is a super slap in the face to positivist, both left and right, positivist point of view that they can just write any law that they want. No, you have limited powers that are set within the Constitution that you're allowed to do and you're not allowed to do. Anything beyond, or I should say, that you're allowed to do, and anything beyond the original text that goes beyond that, you do not have the authority to create those powers in the first place. And I would go, as a constitutionalist point of view, I would go so far as any gun, any type of weapons or commerce clause, you can't regulate what people create. It was only to be made regular, make regular about things that happen between the states, but not to regulate them. This is the same thing with the Second Amendment. It's a well-regulated militia. It means to make regular. So it means people who are need to come together and make a militia and need to practice using firearms. It needs to become a regular type of behavior, not to regulate them and constrict those rights, but it's merely to point out that yes, this needs to be more common behavior, and then the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And I would go far as to say, if the government has it, we should have it. Now, I will go ahead and spoil a little bit in this bill. The scope does not go very far. It does not go that far at all. It only really deals with attachments, ammunition, and things that typically have a chilling effect on the purchasing market, which is kind of sad. I kind of wish they did broaden it up to where they could say, no, we're not going to recognize your authority to keep people to stop people from walking in 1,000 feet of a school. That I consider that to be unconstitutional anyway, even though I don't recognize the Constitution as authority anyway, as voluntarist. But anyway, that put aside, I want to try to get back to the bill. I'm kind of going on a tangent about the Constitution point of view. We do not recognize the powers from the positive point of view. It's super big slap in the face. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent. It's just, anyway. Although several states have granted supremacy to laws and treaties made under the granted powers of the United States Constitution, with supremacy does not extend to various federal statutes and executive orders, administrative orders, court orders, rules, regulations, or other actions which restrict or prohibit the manufacture of ownership and use of firearms, firearm accessories, ammunition exclusively within the borders of Missouri. So it's basically saying, yeah, other states have done it, but we're not going to respect those. I love that. Within the borders of our state, yeah, we're not going to do that. Such statutes or executive orders, administrative orders, court orders, rules, regulations, and other actions exceed the powers granted to the federal government, except to the extent that they are necessary and proper for governing and regulating land and naval forces of the United States, or organizing, arming, or disciplining a militia forces actively employed in the service of United States Armed Forces. In other words, they're saying if they're a free, sovereign individual, you do not have the right to restrict them underneath these forms of regulation, like administrative orders, executive orders, blah 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 blah, except if they're conscripted in armed forces underneath your command. So if they're not in the army or other type of militia and military, now if they're a private militia, that's different. But if they're a sovereign individual, they have the right, regardless of what the federal government has to say. So again, more slapping in the face with this really strong Jeffersonian document. Like, this warms my heart. I'm so glad that this finally passed. But anyway, the people of the sovereign United States have given Congress the power to regulate commerce with their foreign nations and among the several states, but regulating commerce does not include the power to limit citizens' right to keep and bear arms. This is something that I will completely disagree with from their point of view. Is they seem to understand not recognizing that they have limited powers, but they don't seem to recognize the Commerce Clause. And it may be that some of them may disagree in the legislature, or I should say the Senate, the Senate may disagree, but they don't want to fight with the federal government on that particular issue. They just want this bill to pass. And I understand politics. I understand how it used to go, but as a voluntarist, I'm going to put my foot down on everything. But I would much rather go all the way into full secession down to the individual. But again, I understand that the statist mindset, this is where they'll always find contradictions. Somebody's going to disagree, and so they got to make these stupid agreements like, yeah, we'll let this slide here if we get this to pass here. And I hate that. I hate that so much. And that's probably one of the reasons why it turned me off to politics so much, and got me into more activism and other stuff like that. And then it got me drawn into voluntarism. But regardless, anyway, so I will disagree with them, like regulating commerce to keep, but we're gonna say no. This doesn't limit the right to keep and bear arms. We're gonna put our foot down. So this is a good step in the right direction. I just wish they would go all the way. Anyway, the right to keep and bear arms in defense of their families, neighbors, persons, or property to dictate as to the sort of arms and accessories law-abiding Missourians may buy, sell, exchange, or otherwise possess within their borders of this state. The people of the several states have also granted the Congress the power and lay and collect taxes, duties, import, excises, to pay the debts and provide the common defense of general welfare of the United States, and make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution of powers vested in the United States Constitution of the government of the United States, or any department office thereof. So it's, again, they're recognizing that they have authority. Again, I'm going to say voluntarist. I don't. But they're recognizing the federal authority, but only in these specific areas. And it's constantly making me trip up because it's contradictory. But anyway, but you don't have the authority of this next sentence. The constitutional provisions merely identify the means by which federal government may execute its limited powers and shall not be construed to grant unlimited power, because to do so would be to destroy the carefully constructed equilibrium between the federal and state governments. And this is where they go completely bonkers and not Jeffersonian at all. Most constitutionalists would say it's because unlimited powers would go against the individual liberties of the individual. Here they talk about the equilibrium between the federal and state governments. That's not what the Constitution was about. That's not what the Bill of Rights was about. The Constitution was about, these are the specific areas that you have the rights to lay and collect taxes, write laws, and these other stuff. Even as a constitutionalist would say, it's not about what the states can do. The individuals within the states granted the right of the federal government to do these things, but not unlimitedly so. This is a limitation to keep them from infringing upon the individual's rights, not between the bureaucracies of the federal and the state governments. This is where they go off track. And I wish they didn't do this in this document, but this is the best that you can get with Republicans. Anyway, this is a good step in the right direction, but this is the one paragraph that I wish that they had left out. Like this was so terrible. I disagree with it. Anyway, even if I were a constitutionalist, which I'm not, most constitutionalists would agree that statement is untrue. Anyway, consequently, the General Assembly rejects any claim that taxing and spending powers of Congress can be used to diminish in any way the right to keep and the people to keep and bear arms. Now this is moving away. We've kind of had enough slapping in the face. Like, you may have this authority, but you don't have the authority to do all of this. I love this document so much. But now we're getting down to exactly what we're putting our hand up and saying, no, you can't do this. This is our line in the sand. Don't cross it. We're gonna go to war with you. Anyway, the people of Missouri have vested the General Assembly with the authority to regulate and manufacture, possession and exchange the use of firearms within the borders of the state, subject only to the limits imposed by the Second Amendment of the Constitution. I would disagree with that statement. Again, the Constitution of the United States and the Missouri Constitution. So the Second Amendment in the United States Constitution specifically says you have no authority to regulate any form of self-protection. Any. So if the government can have it, I can have it. Even as a constitutionalist, that's what that means. So the fact that the federal government and the state both regulate any form of self-protection is in contradiction to the Bill of Rights. Like, hello? Even from a constitutional point of view. And so this I just completely disagree with, even from a constitutionalist point of view. Does not make any sense. No, that's not what that means. It means, from the Second Amendment point of view, you don't have any right, any authority to regulate it. But they're saying, but what they're saying here is invested in General Assembly authority, regulate, facture. You don't have the authority to do these things. You may have the authority to regulate, but I disagree with that completely. No, you don't. I'm sorry. Even if, as a voluntarist, even from a constitutionalist point of view, no, you don't. I'm sorry. The General Assembly of the State of Missouri strongly promotes responsible gun ownership, including parental supervision of minors and proper use, storage, and ownership of all firearms, and prompt reporting of stolen firearms, and the proper enforcement of all state gun laws. And the Federal Assembly of the State of Missouri hereby condemns any unlawful transfer of firearms and the use of firearm or any criminal or unlawful activity. I think this might be a jibe or a stab at. There was recently a guy who was from the NRA on the board of the directors of the NRA. I forget exactly his name or exactly what his status was. He wasn't on the board of directors, but he was someone in the board of directors who was lobbying, and he tried to slip this in this bill. This was back when Nixon was governor, and it was one of the things that would slip in. Well, but this also is going to regulate people who have a stolen firearm if they don't report it stolen within 4 weeks. I think it was 4 weeks. Could be wrong. I need to read the previous versions of this bill. I read the news article on this. Then they're going to get a misdemeanor charge. No. And the Republicans in like more constitutionalist leaning Republicans, I should say. It was actually bipartisan anyway that passed in this bipartisan in the Senate, which was cool. But mostly people who wrote this bill who completely kicked out this NRA idiot said no, we're not putting this in there. Nope. They kicked him out and said no, we're not doing that. Screw you, and basically completely defrauded him and posted it on social media and stuff. Like, this is a gun control nut in the NRA. No. So anyway, I think that's what this is alluring to, because even though we respect that people should be responsible, this is what we're going to have in our Missouri Constitution. So again, this is a jibe, but we're not going to impose new regulation. This is what we're actually going to do. So Section 1420, the following federal acts, so this is 1420 in the Missouri Constitution, the following federal, excuse me, the following federal acts, laws, executive orders, administration orders, court orders, rules, regulations shall be considered infringements on the rights to keep and bear arms as guaranteed by the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, Article 1, Section 23, the Constitution of Missouri, within the borders of the state, including, but not limited to, oh, wait, I didn't see that before, but not limited to, so it could potentially be, this is so good, hang on, but not limited to, hey, this could potentially be used as a justification if we can convince enough Leos to not enforce the assault weapons ban. The assault I forget the exact act by Ronald Reagan that banned machine guns, the manufacture of machine guns, because this could potentially nullify anything from the federal government. I didn't see that before, but not limited to. Whenever you have a phrase like this in law, I read laws a lot, as a constitutionalist. I've read so much of the Missouri Constitution and laws, and tried to, in my activism, going from a campaigner. And so whenever you see something that says, but not limited to, oh boy, that's opening a can of worms. But anyway, this is the thing that we're going to specifically. I'm sorry I'm going on a tangent, but I didn't see that before. But it potentially could be used as a justification in if a Leo stops another Leo or a Fed, like a ATF agent or a ATF agent, FBI, anyone from the federal government that tries to infringe on the Second Amendment rights of the citizen. The Leo has the authority to, or has the potential, I hate saying the authority, but to the constitutional people out there, and especially to empower the Leos, please step up to the plate and stop the tyranny that's out there. If you see someone that is going to stop and raid someone who's building machine guns, they're not selling them to anyone, but just merely building parts that could potentially make guns that could combat a tyrannical government. A prepper that's trying to prepare. This is another Waco situation. If you see someone, you have the ability to stop him. And if that were to go to court against against you, you can have your lawyer bring up this, but not limited to, phrase as justification. Because as a state legislator, you will have the ability to say, I was just following the state's rule. And the states even admit, the United States federal government admit that the states have more authority than the federal government. That means that if this act is there, if you go to court, there could be case law if you were arrest a fellow agent or a fellow law enforcer or agent of the federal government. You could potentially get case law passed against the Gun Control Act of 1986. That's crazy. We could potentially see fully automatic machine guns come back. That's crazy. I'm sorry I'm going on a tangent, but I didn't see that before, so I'm really glad I read this again and recording. Anyway, this is of this borders of the state, including but not limited to any tax, levy, fee, or stamp imposed on firearms, firearm accessories, or ammunition not common to all other goods and services which might be reasonably expected to create a chilling effect on the purchase or ownership of these items by law-abiding citizens. So this phrase right here is laying out a specific fee that's not talking about machine guns or stuff like that. This is only talking about bump stocks, maybe a bullet button like in California, large capacity magazines, binary triggers, anything that have been proposed in taxes and other stuff like that is supposed to disenfranchise people from buying guns that have been proposed in other states and by the federal government. This is going to nullify. This is specifically what we're saying no to. This is our line in the sand. Now, it's important to go back to the not limited to for future case law. This is something that could be used as justification for that. But this is our line. This is where both the Republicans and then the Democrats of Missouri recognize the constitutional rights, not constitutional, but the rights of the people as recognized by the Constitution. That's the proper way to say from a constitutional point of view. But anyway, but the rights of the people, keep and bear arms, this is our line in the sand that we're going to say no to. And if we see someone trying to infringe on that right, we're going to stop you. So this is specifically talking about any tax, levy, fee, or accessories that's going to try to stop people from buying stuff. Even regulation, and I think it does that. So anyway, now the second part, this is the next thing. So taxes, accessories, other stuff like that, imposes a chilling effect. And it's important to talk, I suppose I should talk about it before I get to registration and tracking. A chilling effect is basically when there's legislation proposed that it still is legal, but you have to pay a fee on top of it. So this is like when marijuana is legal, but there's like a 40% sales tax on top of it. No, no thanks. And so it's trying to keep people from buying it, and the state earns revenue. That's really what it's all about. It's about earning revenue, not from the state, but in particular for federal government. So this is talking about, like, we could potentially put this on the assault weapons ban, the Gun Control Act, whatever you want to. It's not gun control. What is that Reagan signed? I always forget the exact name of 1986. Where, not 1986, it's actually the original tax stamp back from the 30s I'm referring to. Sorry, not the 1986 assault weapons ban. But the machine gun ban, or whatever it is, that it's a $200 tax on top of that. That could potentially be applied to that. That's a chilling effect to try to stop people from buying machine guns. And then, of course, they stopped manufacture in 1986. But before that, it was just a chilling effect to try to stop people from excuse me, to stop people from buying guns. Is it's a fee that's added on top of it, imposed as a tax, or some type of regulation of some bureaucracy thing that you have to sign through that creates a chilling effect. That's what a chilling effect is on, and this is a common phrase in laws that you will read and other stuff. I'm explaining it to the normies out there that may not read laws as extensively as I do. Anyway, let's get to the registration. Sorry, I keep going on these tangents. This is going to be a super long video, but it's important that you know this information. Any registering or tracking of firearms, firearm accessories, or ammunition which might be reasonably expected to create a chilling effect on the purchase ownership of those items by law-abiding citizens, or I should say otherwise law-abiding citizens. It's important. They should have made it important to discern otherwise law-abiding citizens, because the federal government is imposing a law, so you would be disobeying the law, and then we're not going to recognize the authority of that. I love that. Anyway, but they should have discerned that in case it does get brought up in court later, but this is close enough. It's close enough. So anyway, so any registration, so not just any tax or fee imposed on these items, but it's also any registration or tracking of these items. So they're not going to allow you to put numbers on it. They're not going to allow you to write your name when you buy this stuff, or create any type of bureaucracy that you have to go through to get these items. You should be able to buy these items voluntarily from a business owner without any government involvement whatsoever. I love it. And these are the things that they're a line in the sand again. But again, I want to go back to the but not limited to phrase. So again, if we go to court over something like this, if a Leo steps up for the rights of the individual and says no, and there's case law on it, we can get case law on it, we may get more freedom. So I need you, I'm really reaching out to you, Leos. Please, if you're out there and you stand for Second Amendment rights, if you really do, if you see a fellow officer that's infringing on somebody's individual rights to keep and bear arms, or you hear something that they're going to do a raid, ask the question, why? Are they involved in some violent behavior? Are they doing something other illegal besides just owning a gun? Or do you truly believe that they should be able to keep that gun, and you should stop them and arrest them and hold them accountable? If you do that, we could get more freedom, because it will point out that we will not stand for tyranny as a people. If we are truly free, if this truly means something to you, this Second Amendment right here, liberty or death, you will stand up and you will stop these tyrants. Okay? Anyway, I keep going on tangents. Sorry. I apologize. But any registering or tracking of owners of firearms, firearm accessories, ammunition, which might reasonably be expected to create a chilling effect on the purchase of those items of law-abiding citizens. Any act forbidding the possession of ownership, so not just taxes, not just registration or tracking, it's outright ban. Nope, we're not going to recognize that either. Of use, use or transfer of firearm. Oh, so private transfers? Nope, we're not going to respect that. People can trade outside of. People can voluntarily trade outside of background checks. So like the things that have been, it's like we need to close the loophole of people not going through background check. It's called private sale. I can take this AR-15 and sell it to my buddy over here, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's supposedly a loophole. I trust him, and you shouldn't have a say over that. I'm sorry. So anyway, any act forbidding the possession or transfer of firearm, accessory, ammunition, law-abiding citizen, any act ordering the confiscation of firearms. Again, if you hear something, see something, know something of ordering of a confiscation of a firearm, if you see a judge, a warrant that a judge has signed, and you, even if it's your police chief, even if it's the chief of your police that is ordering you, I'm talking to you, Leos, is ordering you to go and fill out the search warrant, and it's only for this gun. Disobey it and put the chief in handcuffs. I'm serious. You may go, well, I can't do that. I have to follow. You know it's wrong. You do. You know it's wrong. Put him in handcuffs. Go put him in a cell because you know he deserves it. I'm gonna really drill this through you guys. Anyway. So, confiscation of firearms, accessories, ammunition of law-abiding citizen. All federal acts, laws, executive orders, administrative orders, court orders, rules, and regulations, regardless if enacted before or after provisions of sections. That's really good to say before this law is enacted. That's really cheeky. I like it. Of 1/410 through. It says to, but they really should have said through. Again, some of the language is important for writing law. But anyway, through 1/485, which infringe on the people's right to keep and bear arms as guaranteed by the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, Article 1, Section 23 of the Constitution of Missouri, shall be invalid in this state, shall not be recognized by the state, shall be specifically rejected by the state, and shall be considered null and void and of no effect in this state. Oh man, that's so good. Anyway, that's so great. I want to slow it down so you can feel the impact, but I kind of want to jog through this because it's getting long. We still have a lot of pages to go through. In section 1/440, it shall be the duty of the courts. And again, every time we have a section number, this is already in the Missouri Constitution. If you want to go to missouri.gov and find the Missouri Constitution, you can get this. Or you can get the specific bill that I'm reading from as a PDF. But it is in your Constitution right now, as a Leo, that you are empowered to enforce. It shall... Okay. In section 1/440, it shall be the duty of the courts and law enforcement agencies of the state to protect the rights of the law-abiding citizens. Oof, if you didn't believe me before, here it is right now in plain text. You are empowered to stop your own police chiefs, to stop the feds, the ATF, anybody from the federal government, anyone that infringes on a citizen's rights, you are empowered to stop them. In section 1/440, I think I said 440, sorry. Section 440 in the Missouri Constitution. It is, it's not a penal code, it's in the Constitution. As a bill from the Senate. It's the highest up in the state. So it will literally flatten anything the federal government wants. And you are empowered to stop them. Anyway, law enforcement agency of the state to protect the rights of law-abiding citizens, to keep and bear arms within the borders of the state, and protect these rights from the infringements defined under section 1/420. Oh man, that's so good. No person, including... this is probably the best law since constitutional carry I have ever read. Constitutional carry passed in 2017. Wait, 2017? 2016? I think it's 2016, not 2017. My bad. It was early 2016 too. I knew it was either 2017 or early 2016. It was one of the two. Anyway, since constitutional carry was passed, that that pretty much flattened everything within the state. Said, and it even has a provision. I don't want to go over constitutional carry. That's for another video. Missouri gun laws are great. If you want to go around toting a gun anywhere, you can come to Missouri. It's a great place to be. Anyway, I gotta get back to the bill. It's too good. 420. No person, including any public officer or employee of the state or any political subdivision of the state, shall have the authority to enforce or attempt to enforce any federal acts, laws, executive orders, administrative orders, court orders, rules, regulations, statutes, or ordinances infringing on the right to keep and bear arms as described under Section 1410. Again, driving it home. If it's your fellow officer, if it's your judge that signs a warrant, if it's even if it's your police chief, you are empowered by this law in Section 1410 to put him in cuffs and put him in a cage for his tyrannical actions. You are empowered to do so. That's so great. Oh man. And people who are watching this that are statists and are even constitutionalists may be going, oh, I don't want a civil war to go on. All the libs are gonna get mad and they don't have freaking guns. And the only people that might try to stop you are the elitist FUDs. And even then, they might roll over and go, well, I don't really want to get into a fight with everybody. That's normally how FUDs go. Elitist FUDs typically roll over when it comes to gun rights. They usually do roll over. Those are the only people who might pose a threat because they're armed. Everyone else is not going to stop you. No one else that calls for gun regulation has guns or any means of protection except you, the law enforcement and the armed citizens, constitutionalists, people who stand for gun rights, voluntarists. You are empowered to stop the tyrants. I love it. To keep and bear arms under Section 1410 of the Missouri State Constitution. Okay. Section 1460. 1. Any entity or person who acts knowingly as defined under Section 562016 to violate the provision under Section 1450 or otherwise knowingly deprives a citizen of Missouri of the rights or privileges ensured by the Second Amendment. And it's important to say ensured, as again, more constitutional speak. In privileges, I don't like the word privileges, but it says ensured rights or privileges. Ensured. It's not saying that you don't already have it. It's just saying that Second Amendment ensures that you have it, protected from the federal government, and tyrants. Not that you don't already have it inherently from our humanity or given to us by God or wherever you want to get the right from. You as an individual have the right. So it's important to say insured and not issued. That would be positive speak. By the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the States, under Section 1, Article 1, Section 23 of the Constitution of Missouri, while acting under the color of any state or federal law, shall be liable to the injured party in the action at law, suit in equity of other proper proceedings for redress. So, again, not only are we empowered to stop somebody, but there could be potential repercussions for their actions, tyrannical actions. So this is saying not only are you empowered to stop tyrants, but there may be repercussions for those tyrants as redressed in this bill. Or now I should say law. In such actions, the court may award to the prevailing party other than the state of Missouri or any political subdivision of the state reasonable attorney's fees and costs. Okay, that's not bad. Sovereign, official, or qualified immunity shall not be an affirmative defense in such actions. Yes! Yes! So even if a court, even if a judge issues a warrant to go confiscate these guns, he doesn't get immunity. Again, more slaps in the face. No, you don't get an exemption from morality. You will be held liable for your actions of tyranny. I love it. Any person while acting as an official, agent, or employee or deputy of the government of the United States, or while otherwise acting under the color of federal law while within the borders of the state. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read it carefully, but it just makes me smile and laugh so much. Who knowingly, as defined under section 562.016 in 1, enforces or attempts to enforce any infringements identified under section 1410, or gives material aid and support to efforts of who enforce and attempt to enforce the infringements identified. Wait a minute, what could that apply to? It's identified in section. It didn't say officials. It just says these officials may enforce. So even if they hire private militia under the table, some crazy whack jobs, if it's found that they are guilty of doing that, of trying to tyrannically enforce their will on somebody, hey, they're still going to be held liable. I like it. Even if it's a private militia trying to stop other private citizens, hey, you know what? Hey, they're still going to be held to full extent of the state law, regardless of whether. So let's give a scenario. So if the United States federal government starts sending feds here and we arrest them, now if they hire some like people from NATO, or maybe even a private military, some private militia. I'm trying to avoid militia, but private military, some guns for hire to go and confiscate people within the United States of Missouri. If we find the paper trail back to you, we will hold you accountable. So hey, that's pretty cool. Anyway, we shall be identified in section 1410. Shall be permanently illegitimate and serve as law enforcement officer, state political subdivision of the state. Neither the state nor any political subdivision of the state shall employ as a law enforcement officer or supervisor of law enforcement officer any person who is ineligible to serve in such a capacity under the section. Now I didn't quite understand that. I haven't read these sections yet. Neither the state nor any political subdivision of the state shall employ as a law enforcement officer or supervisor. I'm trying to unpack that, but sometimes these laws, sometimes they write it in such a way that I can't read it. Sometimes, even for me, who's read many bureaucratic laws, for the most part, it's been in very plain English and very easy for anyone to understand. It's a slap in the face with constitutionalism. This is more bureaucrat speak, so I'm trying to understand it. Sorry. Neither the state. Maybe I'm just stupid. I'm just gonna skip this. Try not to explain it to you. Maybe I'll come back and redress this in another video. But anyway, it doesn't seem to me like what it seems to be what I just talked about earlier up here. Political subdivision of the state shall employ as a law enforcement. Yeah, it seems the same thing. Supervisor of the law enforcement. So you can't even hire new people that are going to be tyrants. That seems to be what that's saying. Now we've only got one more page left. Okay. Any person residing in this section. Any person residing or conducting business in a jurisdiction who believes that a law enforcement officer or supervisor of law enforcement officers or such a jurisdiction has taken action that would render that person ineligible under this section to serve in such a capacity shall have standing to pursue an action for declaratory judgment in the circuit court of the country in which the action allegedly occurred, or in the circuit. Okay, I think what now we're talking about is once we hold them accountable, it can go up to higher courts, and we can redress this. But we're still going to stop you and hold you up for redress, but we were going to fight you in. That's what I think that they're trying to do now. As we're kind of wrapping it up. That we've gone through the sections. This is what this is our line in the stand. Don't pass it. Even law enforcement of the state, even federal agents of the federal government that try to come here, we're going to hold you accountable. We're going to put you in jail, and then we're going to put you in our private courts and try you. But now we're going to, if you want to redress and go up to the higher circuits or higher courts in the federal government, you have the ability to do that. We're not going to go full tyrannical and secede, which I would prefer, but again, I don't really want a civil war either. I don't want revolution. So I understand that they're trying to wrap it up and leave it up to redress. So if you want to be able to fight us and go up to civil court or circuits, other circuit courts like the Ninth Circuit is usually what ends up being for the Second Amendment. Second Amendment cases. I don't know what it would be. What Second Amendment or First Amendment infringements. Oh, sorry, I just smacked my mic cord. But I don't know what it would be for reprimand of a agent of the state. I don't know where those cases usually go to. I've never even seen it happen, where someone who gets arrested for violating for a civil rights violation. I've never seen that happen. Like usually, what happens for activists is it's really good that they're wrapping it up, making it very clear what will happen. In a way, I like this. But usually what happens is a law enforcement officer or someone from the FBI will arrest as an open carry activist or someone who is expressing their rights and is showing what they're free to do, and then the law enforcement officer does the failure, infringement of the Fourth Amendment, does all the stupid things, doesn't follow procedure, and then it gets all captured on video, and then he'll get and then you open records request, and you take him to court and sue him. You get like maybe a $10,000 case against that particular department. He gets suspended for a few months, gets paid vacation, and then he usually that department doesn't even want that officer anymore, so they ship him off to another department, and he doesn't really get that much reprimand. But this is something that we were wrapping it up, and it potentially can go elsewhere. So this is something where someone can get arrested and directly reprimanded as an individual for violating an individual's rights. This is I've never seen before in law what could potentially happen to law enforcement officers or federal agents. Never seen a law that specifically says, no, you are not allowed to do this, and we will arrest you and hold you accountable. Never seen that before. This makes me so excited. Isn't that weird? I'm just one of those weird kids that gets excited by reading boring laws. I just am. And so now we're wrapping it up. Like, you will be able to appear to the Ninth Circuit, or I don't know where this will eventually go, but you are able to apply to higher courts. Anyway, Circuit Court of Cole County. Okay, there's one. With respect to the employment eligibility of the law enforcement officer or the supervisor of law enforcement officers under this section. If a court determines that the law enforcement officer or supervisor of law enforcement officers has taken any action that would render him or her ineligible to serve in that capacity under this section, so this is talking about whether if they infringe on somebody's rights, that they may not be eligible, that they were acting under the law. That's a good assertion. That they were acting as a private individual when they were enforcing these laws. That's a nice assertion, and they may not be eligible to appeal to this Cole County, which is good, because I know that a lot of these courts that do, and I'm sorry for Leos that are hearing this, but there are unfortunately a lot of police unions that get involved in this stuff, and they make it very easy for you to get back out on the streets. Just makes it very frustrating for open carry activists and other civil rights activists that really want people who infringe on people's rights reprimanded. We really want people who do wrong to be reprimanded, and for good behavior to be rewarded. So We don't want people who do the right thing to face consequences. We want people who do the wrong thing to face consequences. And so this is specifically saying you may not be eligible to get into this. And so drawing these lines in the sand and going through this bureaucracy is a good thing, even though it may be very bad for someone who screws up. But that brings the best out of people by trying to follow the law to the letter. And to the voluntarists that are watching, I don't really care about the law anyway. I'm going to live free regardless, and I'm just going to follow the laws that make sense. Anyway, it is important for people who want to bring freedom and protect people's rights to please do so, and to try to not fall into this area of civil rights violations. Or this will happen to you. This is really important that they do write this, and you do get reprimanded for your actions if you do something wrong. Anyway, the law enforcement officer or supervisor of law enforcement officers shall immediately be terminated from his or her position. Not, again, this is what I just talked about. Not just suspended and then shipped off to another district. Immediately wow. Whew, terminated. Now you have the ability to appeal, but you may not be eligible. Whew. This is, this makes... This makes me warm inside. This is a really good law. An eligible law enforcement officer or supervisor of law enforcement officers shall be required to pay the court costs and attorney's fees associated with judgment of action that resulted in the finding ineligibility. Wow. Not only. So this again. Normally, like I said, I was just talking about this. Usually what happens is you get suspended, and then the department has to pay out, and then they're like, I don't want to pay. This guy is violating people's rights. I'm going to ship him off to another department. That usually is what happens. This is saying, if you do this, you may not be eligible to do that, and you will be tried as an individual, and you won't be the one that has to pay the $10,000. Oof. And that means tax dollars. The tax dollars that are paying from that department, from the city or the state, from that department, the tax dollars that fund that department are not going to be paid, which makes no sense. Like the people that are being tried from civil rights violations, they're also going to be taxed to pay themselves. That doesn't make sense. So now they're saying, this is specifically saying, no, you may not be eligible to be tried as an officer of this department. You may be tried as an individual. Wow. That just, whoa. This is police accountability to a whole new level. I've never seen this before. This is actual police reform. This is something that activists have been crying about for so long. Wow. Nothing in this section shall preclude a person's right of appeal or remediation provided under Chapter 590. So you do have the ability to appeal, but you may be ineligible. Section 1480, excuse me, for the purposes of Section 1410 through, it says to, but it should be through. I want to try to correct them, but linguistics is important. Through 1485, this is the specific sections of what we just went through. The term law-abiding citizen shall mean, wow. So again, what I was talking about, I was saying otherwise, now it's wrapping it up. Otherwise, this is wrapping up. The term law-abiding citizen shall mean a person who is otherwise precluded under the state law from possessing a firearm, they should have done the whole thing, firearm, this, that, and the other thing. But hey, it's okay. It's okay. I wish they had gone through it. I know it's annoying, but I wish they had, because again, if the prosecutor comes along and says, "Well, you didn't say magazine," and shall not be construed to include anyone who is not legally present in the United States or the state of Missouri. So this is wrapping it up, saying, I remember how I said otherwise law-abiding citizen except under federal law that we don't recognize as authority. Now we're wrapping it up and we're saying law-abiding citizen is the term that was used. We're defining our terms later, which normally in a law you usually define the terms first and then you say what you want to say and then you do wrap up. Here they've kind of like, it almost feels like somebody wrote this in a mad, angry way, Jeffersonian way. We need to stop government tyranny. And then they got reformed a little bit and wrapped up a little bit by some other legislators. But I love it. This is a great, great bill that got passed. But normally you define your terms first. But again, it's nice that they eventually come around defining their terms. Law-abiding citizen who is not otherwise precluded under the state law from possessing. And they should have said firearm, magazine, other firearm or firearm attachments. But regardless, they should have done through all things, but not limited to. But again, it's close enough. Hopefully it'll work. Sections 185. Any provisions, sections of 1410 through, I'm going to keep correcting it, 1485, or the application thereof to any person or circumstances is held invalid, such determination shall not affect the provisions or other applications of section of 1410 through 1485, which may be given effect without the invalid provision or application of the provisions of section are severable. Okay, a few things to impact here. If any provision of sections, the application thereof, person or circumstances held invalid, such determination shall not affect the provision. What? Hang on. The General Assembly of State of Missouri strongly promotes current. So this right here, whenever they have it in flat brackets, usually is whenever they have something that was they wanted to attach to the bill, but it wasn't actually a part of the legislator. It's usually just tacked on in footnotes and is written there to be legislative intent. So this is something. So the General Assembly of the State of Missouri strongly promotes responsible gun ownership, including parental supervision of minors' property, ownership of firearms, to prompt reporting of stolen firearms, proper enforcement of all state and gun laws. The General Assembly condemns any unlawful transfer of firearms, to the use of firearms, or any criminal unlawful activity. Don't really agree with that, but anyway, it's what we get. So, and otherwise, that was a really good bill. Things to take from it. Are this is our line in the sand. Don't cross it. If you do, we're going to stop you. We're going to prosecute you, and you may not get that shiny. I'm an official. I'm a public official. I'm immune from the morality. Nope. You're going to be held personally responsible for your actions. So, some really, really good stuff from this bill. Don't really agree with all of it, specifically the parts that talk about inequality from the federal and state. Well, no, this Constitution refers to inalienable rights from the citizens, from the government in general, both federal and state. And when you're talking about the rights in between the federal and the state, it usually is talking about that the states gave the individual rights. Of course, the individuals gave the states the rights, and the states gave the federal government the rights only in these specifically enumerated rights that are delegated to it. The voluntarist voluntarist, I don't think you can have given certain rights like taxation and regulation on specific things. But anyway, from the constitutionalist point of view, and these are the specific areas that you're only allowed to do. And so the states always necessarily, it's not equal, it's not more federal. States have always had more power than the federal government. It always has been that way. And that's from the Constitution's point of view. I should reiterate, being voluntarist. But you are empowered as a law enforcement officer to stop tyranny. You are empowered as a private citizen to stop law enforcement officers from violating citizens' rights. You have the ability, you can't arrest someone as a private citizen, obviously, but you can call the police on the police. Feel empowered. This is the one thing I want you to get. You have the ability to dial 911. I may actually, normally, as a voluntarist, I don't want to call the police. I have my private list on cell 411 that I call my biker crew that are going to come to save my ass. Normally, I don't call 911. But now, if it's a cop, normally I don't want to get out in a shootout with another cop or a federal agent. But if he's going to try to violate my rights, now I am actually empowered to dial 911. I may actually do it. Before, I was like, nah, I don't really see a reason to call 911. I have pretty much everything covered. If I need medical supplies, I got that covered. I have a friend I can call. If I need someone to save my ass, I got these people to call. I had stuff covered. Now, if I want to hold somebody accountable in a public court, I can. I actually have something to dial 911 for. So, some things to take away. You, the people, and you, the law enforcement officers, are empowered to stop tyranny with this law. You can do it. So, hope this shed some light on some law and the Jeffersonian point of view, and really opened your eyes to what potentially could change for Missouri in general, Missouri and the states in general. What could potentially step out about states drawing their line in the sand and say no. And if we can get an interaction where somebody violates the rights, we arrest that person, we can get case law and we can get things set up to where we can actually bring more freedom through activism. Not through begging the masters to let us be more free. We need to vote for someone that will represent us. No. We are empowered to stop tyranny. We have the ability to stand up for our rights and say, no, enough is enough. This is my line in the sand. Don't cross it. If you do, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to hold you accountable. It truly is, in the world that we live in today, it really is liberty or death. I hate to be this serious, but it really is. When it comes down to it, I will choose liberty over my own life every single time. And I hope you would too. But if we can bring about an equilibrium of, I will take a little bit of poison, I will take a little bit of these constitutionalist point of views. I will work with law enforcement officers. If you will work with me, if you will help me, we can bring about change and more freedom in our country. If you truly do believe that. Not just, I believe the Second Amendment protects muskets and people who don't have mental disabilities and aren't criminals or drug addicts or no. Liberty applies to everyone, regardless of who they are, what race they are, what they do. If they don't hurt anyone, they aren't violent,
they're still people, and they have the same rights as you. You shouldn't be an elitist. You shouldn't be a FUD. You should realize that people have the right to protect their own life. And you should stand to help protect that, preserve that. Make myself cry. Please, help us bring about change. Bring about change in a real way. We may not be able to stop the broken system over in Washington, but at least we can bring peace and prosperity here in our state, in our county, in our cities, in our homes, with our friends and with our family. We can make a change. And I hate to say we as a voluntarist, but more individual. I want to bring rights down to the individual, but we as a people working together voluntarily can make a difference and stand up for liberty over tyranny. And I hope you would too. I invite you to help us. And with that, love you and God bless. Have a great day.